So I made it to the other side of the river. As I showed you, somewhere along the early parts of this clip, the cubic flow per second was down considerably. It almost felt like the river was running backwards at times. What was interesting is finding warm areas in the river. The water was cold. It's one of those things where if you are of a certain age, you might understand what I'm saying, where it's like a lot of the grandparents will say, I used to do that stuff, but not anymore. I just let the kids do that. It might be worth reconsidering these things and jumping in the refreshing water with our grandchildren if we get the chance. If you're afraid to swim in your local rivers, then as a steward of that land, you might want to do something about that. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this video segment has made sense, and I hope you have a great day. Stay tuned. were to theorize about this concept about getting into the cold river, for an example, on a hot day, and how I referenced that our grandparents might want to get into the river, I didn't maybe include all of the details, which included the fact that maybe in order to withstand some of the climate-related instances that we are all going to continue to experience, we might need to be capable of withstanding extreme temperature variation instances just to survive. Because let's just put it this way. Let's say that we had an accident of some sort in our vehicle and we spun off out of control into a river where only just enough of our face was exposed so that we could breathe. And we were on this highway that I'm on, for an example, where there's just so many cars. It's not the winter time. If our car was sticking out just enough to where I could breathe. Take a moment to breathe right now, by the way, deep thinkers. I know that some of my thoughts might cause a little bit of anxiety, because to imagine something like even being in peril might be too shocking, might be too extreme for some people. But for other people, you can take it. And so that's why you're tuning in to the Spiritual Devil, where I share insights that are relevant to the instances that we are experiencing right now. As we continue to recognize in our lineage the advanced and sudden aging process, and how that has even manifested in many of our people in their late 30s, 20s, aging in ways that are difficult to remember ever having had happened before. Maybe there is a lot of anxiety out in the world today. So what you're doing as you're experiencing this conversation and exposing your anxiety to the potential that it's just a feeling that we might want to become very comfortable with as we encounter these latter stages of climactic collapse. As people begin tuning in to hear these things that are being said, because they want to learn true survival aspects and not how to pack a backpack for a future you're not going to have time to prepare for. I was imagining right now, what if the landscape changed so significantly that I couldn't even find my vehicle after having experienced an earthquake, for an example? Would I be in for some hard times coming up on 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a slightly chilly evening where the temperatures will get down into the 60s and 50s? Or would I be able to breathe even in the face of these mounting challenges? Climate challenge. If you can challenge yourself to accept the fact that everything I've said covers the basis for what you and I agree on, then you can share this safely. And I request humbly that you do that, because this has to do with our future. This is not a message just for you. Everyone who's hearing this is hearing it for a reason. So if there's somebody out there who thinks, well, I don't like that guy, so I can't share their content, or I wronged that guy, so I can't share their content, well, that's just the design of how things are supposed to go.
But in the meantime, for those who are listening and who understand what I'm saying and have got more of an attention span than a goldfish, you'll know how to recognize whether you are truly participating in a conversation or not the moment that you have clarity with someone else able to respond to what you're talking about. If you cannot find your peers, you have to recognize some of the things that are occurring right now are occurring without leadership. The campgrounds at a local national park in my state were overrun by bears that were gathering because they were hungry. A few days ago, I posted a video of a snake that was hunting, much like last year around this same time frame, hunting for an abnormally long amount of time, but it was also out during an unusual time because it was hungry. I've seen an opossum foraging that same wilderness. I've seen vultures sitting idly because there's not really anything to eat or not to eat. Today I passed two road casualties. There's not a whole lot of roadkill anymore. Not too terribly long ago, some people would believe this with enough urgency to figure out how to share that with the world. So, in this quest to humbly make a request, as I've searched and researched the things that can bring back our youth and vitality, and by things normally I mean the actions, the participation that sometimes we forget to put in, the words that we often don't say, that go unspoken generationally because there's a curse feeling when people talk to one another instead of talking with one another and going, hey, it's not so bad hanging out with this person. They're not trying to bash my head in with stones. They're not trying to set fire to things. They're not constantly, whatever we can be judged for, even the constantly pointing out things that as examples I would just like to call out as evidence in the future cases that will be leveraged against those who have participated in the stonewalling of the actions of justice, because they are too extinct. They already died. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Isn't that the message of the chosen ones? If we're talking on that level, isn't that the message of how we're supposed to treat family? If we're talking on that level, isn't that the message of how we should treat some of the changes in the environment that are occurring? If we're talking on that level, and if we can recognize that things are occurring on any level, we can resolve the problem. The biggest problem is that many of us can't resolve having a full conversation. There's too much judgment. There are too many levels of veils that we have to pass through to marry into even the most basic friendship that can be taken or left as if it didn't matter, like a tissue paper. So when we talk about acts like Roe versus Wade, I begin to wonder, Do we value anything at all on any level with any regard to the permanent and lasting damage that every choice of ours makes? Or do we start to look at the frequency and go, oh, maybe it's time that I stop selling all these t-shirts? Support this cause, support that cause. We know what responsibility is. The unfortunate thing in our societies is that we have not had proper fathers step in to say something. Step in parents. They're always stepping off at just the right time when we should have had a conversation. Why are we now having this type of a conversation? If not because of this very haughtiness, arrogance, pride. Can't tell you. Just an observer that there are some difficulties with the communication in some families. Remember, some of this information is still relevant, whether it's relevant to you or not. Being able to ford a river or hear this type of anxiety, let's say you got called upon to listen in a court to the testimony to somebody about somebody's circumstance. Would you be able to tell the truth? And would you be able to tell the difference when you heard it? Or would you be too shocked to where you had to excuse yourself from the courtroom to vomit at all of the disgusting details of the gory case? There are a lot of disgusting truths to the things that we have been practicing in my country. For this reason, I can only wonder if maybe some countries who are extremely vehemently angry at my country are angry because, well, yeah, somebody is getting effed, and not in a good way. And we know the difference. Don't we? As creatures of comfort, the least we can do is give some kind of regard to that which we give that kind of attention to. If something stimulates us, the least we can do is nurture it. And yet most of us, we are dispensable unless we're providing a solution to an addiction and comfort-based pattern of ritualistic lies. Where over and over we continue to forego helping one another, whether it's in truly significant ways or by passing along the information to one another. We will not often ford the rivers together because some people will not be able to make it across, will not be able to afford the cost. So, cost. I can only wonder at times how many things I've cost the universe with my simple requests. But today I was blessed to enjoy a day in the sun, in the river, oblivious to the things that caused me any kind of concern, oblivious to the fact that I couldn't talk with many of the people who I should be able to talk with, I would think, unless one of us has been incapacitated or is now deceased. And so again, it's like you can hear this. Some who are hearing this for one reason, and you'll more than get it when you get it. And for some of you, you just recognize it's just another person going through some crazy things with their family. And why is that? Why is it so difficult to have a relevant conversation? And why do I have to feel like I'm talking in a circle because nobody is responding? I begin to think that in many cases, we really do want to go on a journey that puts us out of it, puts the pain away. We want to go on a selfish journey where we put away the pain so much that we forget to recognize one another's pain. Since we can't recognize anyone else's pain, well, we might as well destroy everything that has ever caused us pain. Because nobody else understands. That's the tendency of a narcissist. For somebody who can sit next to you and yell at you, especially if you're performing a skilled craft, like let's say piloting a high-speed vehicle as there is mounting traffic all around you and responding. Imagine carrying on these dynamic thoughts and how interrupted they can become when somebody just continues to yell with no purpose other than to defend their ego. The thing is, I've already said all of the details as far as why I've put in my 2-week notice. That's it. No wrong or right, what have we got really? Do we have a life of liberty, or have we opted for a life of death? Just depends on what rhetoric you're into. My thoughts are, if we can't communicate between 3 people at a time, we've got a serious breakdown in communication. And it's causing numerous pain points. We all know it. And we can either address the situation calmly and ford the river together, or we can recognize when someone is beyond being able to even think. We can recognize when someone's beyond that capacity. Once something is programmed, like for an example, starting out every morning programmed with the thought of needing to have something specific to wake up. How about like a hot beverage with a lot of different things in them? If we need to do those things, we're probably going to be the person in the furthest most right lane with our blinker indicating that we're going to go to the left. As we exit at way below even the basic safe speed that should have been getting used. If other people are going to be able to leverage complaints about different things, let me tell you, my complaints are very minimal other than if somebody is slowing me down, how can I even get what I'm doing done? Isn't that how all of us think? So anyway, on that note, what I'm going to do is plug in a location, which I should have done from the start. What I'm going to want to do is remain calm while people are yelling at me in my own vehicle. And I have to point this out. Not because it's a liability to me, but because it's a liability to you to continue to play like the possum on the road. Live possums don't have time to play. They're searching for food right now during these daytime hours in some cases, because sometimes there's not enough food. You can see animals coming to ask for food in almost every place you go to that's publicly visited, because, well, there's a percentage of people that will feed some of the animals. Not saying that's even right or wrong, just saying these pairs, in some cases, single pairs that are there, persisting. Sometimes, that's it. That's all you see. There are no other rogue pairs that you would see just 4 years ago, 3 years ago, where you had a variety, a diversity. Now we have, in some cases, animals that almost need our contributions, like the birds that I feed my backyard with the bird feed that I can purchase at the local stores. The only thing about that is all of each of those purchases comes in something destructive. We get down to the point where it's like we're challenged if we do and we're challenged if we don't. But when do we challenge each other to do something just a little bit better? That's what this channel is about. For everyone on here who's thinking anything other than that, it still comes back to the fact that if I cannot communicate with my own father, well, no wonder places are at war. There are people who truly must hate in order to drive away something that would nourish, and to be taught that level of hate and never have unlearned the things that our fathers taught us gets to be a liability, because we might mistreat somebody else only for the security and convenience of our own selves. Selfish. We can become very selfish without recognizing the discomfort that we cause others, even in our mere initial actions, of whether we even return a gesture of saying hello, a gesture of offering good water. A gesture of offering the good opportunity to cross the water with you. We can exist. We can persist. We can resist. But on what values do we actually insist? Tell me where your honor is, and I'll match it with a question that may or may not go answered. That's how I feel. I'm not sure how you feel, but our common goal far outshines our individual goals. That's why it's oftentimes when we do good for others that we feel more satisfied in our jobs. If our jobs are just about talking to defeated people, well, working in a collections location might bring us down if we talk with that type of defeatism all day long. Just a thought. If we hang out with nature all day, normally that can be quite rewarding. If somebody's telling you that the animals are coming out of the woodwork to try and get food from people on a more frequent basis, at least in my neck of the woods, if I show enough video, maybe, perhaps, one of our fathers will understand. They need to stop yelling at the person right next to them. They need to calm down, or, I'm sorry, what can we do except forgive you for you know not what you're doing? Move on. My friend said it. Move on when people don't want to talk with you. They'll tell you. In so many ways. But when people become silent, it's an interesting posturing. And you have to recognize, at whose insistence did the silence come? Was it from someone asking for peace? Or for someone trying to break the peace? There are differences in the ways we accomplish these things that we're accomplishing. And the harms that we cause as we proceed with our wishes leave a lot of discussion sometimes out of the textbooks when it comes to manifesting positive things. If we're manifesting so many positive things for ourselves, at what cost will this be allowable or acceptable? How much does someone have to suffer in exchange for that rate? And is the exchange rate favorable, or is it irresponsible? Those are the kinds of things that I believe we might want to discuss when and if we have the opportunity to discuss things in a forum or a quorum where we can actually discuss this at a level that makes any difference now. Because now it's too late to continue to spin our wheels in the ways that we failed in the past. And we did. We really did. We succeeded, but we succeeded in quite a losing way. Look to your previous histories Look to a people's history of the United States by Howard Zinn. And just see if you don't fit into a certain regard when it comes to fitting in. So fitting in is definitely not anything that anyone can do unless we live a lie, a continuous lie, where we simply excuse away the comforts and discomforts and why we bring them to one another. Excuse away the need to apologize for yelling at the person next to you, even if you're just yelling to someone in the next lane. If you're in the same car yelling at the person, shame on you. You're putting your own life and anyone you brought along at risk. Shame on you. And if you try to jump out of a moving vehicle for reasons that don't make sense, shame on you. I've heard of children doing this, but at a certain point, the irresponsibility as it continues to grow is just, I would be remiss not to mention it, because it is a hazard to the people who I want to protect. It's a hazard. Look around, you can hear and see many hazards. And the actions that are taken. If you really start to pay attention to some things, you'll start to love watching these ride-alongs. I don't know what your condition is in the world where you're at. I hope that you're looking at these clips and getting hope out of them. I hope you're understanding. Cross the river. Legally, I mean. Go to your state park, pay the fee, cross the river. Unless it's in a place where the river's in two different countries. Then you have a quandary, and I didn't mean that. But theoretically, cross the river, dip yourself into chilling waters on a super hot day, take a cold shower. Remember the yelling that happened while you're in the cold shower, shocking yourself into feeling some kind of emotion again. And breathe, just relax. It's all going to be okay. So we're in some pretty good stop and go traffic. I'm about to get on the freeway. I'm going to cut this one out at the 333